me know. Well, I'll let everybody know, okay? Test. Testing. Test. Is the mic on? Is it on? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 3:30, and just to let everybody know, and the people of Guam, because we're showing live. Okay, so what we're here today is that the student body of the Department of Education has asked to meet with senators of the 34th Guam legislature, ask questions about what's going on and the importance of DOE. And currently with me today is Senator Will Castro, who has joined me. And we have the superintendent of DOE, Mr. John Fernandez. We have the chairman of the Board of Education. We also have Mr. Frank Titanel from the bus operation, superintendent of DPW bus operation. So I'll now pass the mic to, oh, and we have also my mayor from the great village of Jigu, Mayor Rudy Mantanani. And where's the vice mayor? Is he here? Hey, Primo, Vice Mayor Sanchez. Here you go, mister.
Yeah. Hafidi, test. Hafidi students, I also would like to recognize, please allow me to stand so I can recognize our folks. We have some of our very dedicated and loyal faculty and staff of our public school system. I know it's 3:30, some students are getting off. I just want to thank Senator Sen Agustin for the opportunity to come before his committee. Actually, it's not even it was just a request from the students last night at our board meeting. They wanted to come down to the legislature. So when the notice went out, I was able to communicate with the senator and ask him if he could provide an audience. We weren't sure if they will still be in session. And so Senator Sen Agustin and Mr. Senator Castro here said without any reservations that they would go ahead and do it. I'll turn it over to the senator to recognize Senator.
Yeah, okay, the mic, can everybody hear me? The mic's on, okay. We also have here present also Senator Lee, the legislative secretary, and we also have Senator Terlai, the vice speaker. So I'll pass the mic around, and who wants to ask first? Oh, can I finish first? Okay, Mr. Mendoza.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman of the Education Committee, we've met with all our stakeholders out in the community. The department has taken an active step, and we wanted to basically, our students were the last stakeholder group, the most important group, because they are the users of our product, which is education. And when we share with them the information, we said, ask questions about what's going on. And this is the best civics class that you can probably be a part of in terms of what's going on in our government. And so we've come down here as the leadership of the Department of Education. We've testified on bills before the legislature. I know the superintendent has also written letters about everything with respect to what's going on with the Department of Education. Last night, we took a vote to authorize the superintendent to look at austerity measures that we may have to implement if we don't have any a reprieve from the cash shortfall that our government is facing. I believe the legislature has acknowledged that there is a potential cash issue. The governor has announced that as well, and you see a lot of these things going on out in our community, and I'm concerned. Furthermore, we've also worked with our external partners. We have Mr. Titon here from DPW, and when you touch education, sir, it touches everyone in our community. We went down to Mellow, we went to Agustin Johnson, and also to Liguan. We met with our principals, our PTO leaders, and I know there's a lot of them that will be coming down here, making their way off of from school. But I just want to thank you, Senator San Agustin Castro, for introducing a bill that actually really puts out there, sets aside some funding that is sorely needed for the Department of Education. These are our students. These are the students that walk the halls of our institutions, our academic institutions. So I said, please, let's engage. And they heeded the call. They activated their students, and you see some of them want some answers from our elected leaders as to how we're going to get through this as a group. We have to stay together. We have to be positive, but at the same time, too, we got to be real about what's going on in our community. So with that, Senator, I'm going to ask our superintendent to give a message.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. I'll be very brief. This is really an opportunity for the students, and I'm glad you all are here to say your piece, because I know that the iBox representative at last night's meeting really said it very well, Luke Bukikosa, when you said it, that your voices have to be heard. So the only thing I'm going to say to the panel here and to all of you is that just as an update, you heard everything from the chairman. I think he brought you up to date. Today I sent a letter to the legislature and to the governor, and I wanted to remind them that there is a law in the books that entitles every public school student to an adequate education. It gives you that right. It sets out what those requirements are, and I've told the legislature that we work to fulfill our mission no matter what you give us in terms of funding. But with all the cuts that we're taking on, I have to say, I think there's a threat that we're not going to be able to meet that mandate. And the law requires that we try to get, from the legislature, from Department of Administration, from Bureau of Budget, from the governor, that we get that support. So I sent a letter saying, look, let's just remind ourselves that there is a law on the books. It was sponsored and co-sponsored by the governor, by Lieutenant Governor Tenorio, by Speaker B.J. Cruz, by Senator Frank Uggan. Some of the senators here were not at the legislature at the time, but it had broad support from the entire legislature. So as long as that's a law on the books, I wanted to come here and say, look, we have a need to make sure that we follow that law and provide the relief that the department is seeking to avoid having to make the cuts that we're making now and the cuts that we're planning and thinking about, just to make sure that we balance the budget and meet the requirement that we're being told to cut $20 million before the end of the fiscal year. So with that said, that's just an update for all of you. You do have a right to at least an adequate education, and I'm glad you're here to speak your mind about it. Thank you.
Okay. That being said, which student wants to ask the first question? Or who? You're right in front of me.
It's on. Hello. Okay. Good afternoon, senators. My name is Ernie John Mellow. I am a senior at Southern High School, and I am currently the active Islandwide Board of Governing Students Chairman for school year 17-18. Before I ask my question, I'd like to thank all the students who were able to come. I thank my iBox for spreading the word, and basically the question I want to ask, and what I'm pretty sure everyone here is wondering, is what's the plan right now, as of right now, that was developed?
Okay. Simply, there was a bill that was introduced by myself and supported by all the senators in a certain degree. It's Bill 248. It's to raise the general sales tax. It was to try to find a cash infusion to the government. You all do know that the governor and the legislature acknowledged it, that there's a $67 million shortfall. With that amount that was identified, the governor stated that he can only reduce or find cuts of up to 37. In that $37 million cut, DOE was identified to cut $19 million. In that process, the superintendent, he advised me that and advised everybody in the legislature and the governor that he can only find 12. That the governor revised the ability to cut in the government to 30. I'm going to safely assume he meant he couldn't cut any more from DOE or from anybody else. My stand on DOE and most of the Senate, all my colleagues, do not want to see a single penny cut from DOE. Because number one, there's the 14 points, adequate education. And understand students and everybody in the audience and the people in Guam. I was in the Board of Education. I was the chairman of the board, and most of the staff here remember, I've always fought for DOE. And I'm not going to stop because I happen to be now a senator, and I happen to be the oversight chair. And my vice is Senator Castro and my colleagues here. But I don't want to see a single penny cut from DOE. But we're going to work with what the government needs to cut. Because this morning, we ended the discussion on Bill 248. We found a source of cash infusion to the government of approximately close to $30 million. So the legislature has taken their part by saying, we found half of what you need to keep the government moving. Now, when I say keep the government moving, it's to avoid the payless payday, to avoid the 32-hour work week, to avoid the furlough, and hopefully now, as the bill, if the bill passes on Friday, it will start heading in that direction. Okay, that's the key. If the bill passes, the $30 million can be an infusion to the government of Guam to divert all the threats that exist. Because I'm an honest believer that, number one, if 11,000 employees in the government of Guam are faced with a payless payday, there's not one store out there that's going to make money. When they don't make money, there's no revenue coming into revenue and tax to feed the government of Guam, to pay the salaries, to keep the lights on in the schools, to keep the buses moving, to do anything the government is doing. So that's what I'm focused on, and that's where we're at with Bill 248. Now, I hope that answered that question, unless any of my other colleagues would like to comment on that one. Did that answer? You got it, right?
Yes, it. Yes, answer my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Senators and Vice Speaker, and all of our dignitaries and valued guests that came along this afternoon. So the main reason that a lot of us showed up tonight, including our beloved students, is the threats that the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, the threats that they're making to our schools and to our day-to-day lives as students. And I know that a lot of us are seniors, at least here right now. A lot of us are seniors, so we might not feel the effect, but I'm also speaking on behalf of the future students who are going into high schools and middle schools, and all the elementary schools. They will be dearly affected. So the main thing that I want to mention here and ask is, there's a lot that's being threatened, including all of our after-school activities, our interscholastic sports. And like my other counterpart from GW was mentioned last night at the board meeting, it is a safe haven to a lot of students, sports. So it's very near and dear to a lot of people's hearts and their lives. And as for the 32-hour work, I know I'm jumping around a little here, just I have a million thoughts right now. And as for the 32-hour work week, where would the students go if DPW is put under it and GDOE isn't? Where would the students go for the parents who aren't under GovGuam? They have, small kids that are in elementary schools, in middle schools that maybe can't watch themselves, or they can't find anyone else, or they can't afford a babysitter, or anyone like that. Where are those students gonna go? So my question here on behalf of the students that are behind all of us, what are your votes, senators, for the bill that will be voted on this Friday afternoon? That's our question. What will your answer be to the vote? What will your stance be? My apologies.
Okay, my answer will be still the same what I gave earlier. Number one, there's only one bill that we're faced with, the Guam legislature today, to vote on, which is Bill 248, which is general sales tax. Like I mentioned earlier, it's to infuse the government with some money. Remember when I mentioned if we can divert or avert the payless payday, the reduction at DOE, and so forth, it will take care of that. And on that bill, it also requires the governor to do the other half, which is 30 million. And if everything's successful, we have stabilized the government today until the end of the fiscal year. That's when we start, and in the coming months, all my colleagues will be sitting in there in the session, and we're going to be discussing the budget. And I know for a fact, if it says DOE, because I oversee DOE, 0 reduction. Okay? That I'll start with. Now, I'm going to have to take a hard swallow because there's a lot of folks in the community that work for other agencies. It says, well, no, that's not fair, Senator Agustin. You should also consider us. Yes, there's 3 areas of responsibility that elected officials are required to fulfill: education, public safety, and the hospital, which is GMH or public health. If we fill those 3, we can try to figure out how to work it. I know DPW is like, well, you're not giving us bus. It impacts DOE, so they'll get some savings. You know what I mean? And it just relates to that. We just got to take a look at the whole picture and see where we can make cuts. Because several of my colleagues, okay, are going to be introducing bills to save and maybe increase some fees, their revenue enhancement, maybe introduce the tax amnesty so we can get more money in the system. Because there's quite a few people out there, or folks, that are not paying their tax up to date. Maybe we can figure out a way how we can help them to pay it earlier. Get a loan, pay off, waive your interest and penalties, but get the money in, because we need to figure out what we need to do in the government, because everybody's talking about reduce the government size. We believe in that. My colleagues, we want to see cuts. We're actually putting ourselves on the line by offering a funding source, but the other side of the government's got to offer the same thing. There's got to be an equal share. It's not about us doing the hard work of identifying which agency to close or what. The governor's that's his role. We're doing our role, and we'll identify a means to support DOE, support public safety, support the hospital, and support everybody in the government of Guam. But, there's going to be some agencies going to take some cuts. Some agencies may be consolidated. So for DOE, we want to relieve you of that worry. Because it does, like I said, whatever happens in DOE, it's a trickle effect. It hits everybody, from the babysitter to the bus, majorly the bus. I mean, and everybody. Everybody is going to get hurt on this. And that's why we have stepped up to the plate and we're doing our part. Does any of my colleagues want to add to that?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure I can see all of you. I want to thank all of you for coming here today. I can recognize a lot of you from the different schools. And thank you for being involved. But we've also heard what you've heard, these threats of cuts to DOE and how it's going to impact the students. And like Senator San Agustin said, there's no senator that wants that. We are praying that even the governor doesn't want to see that. And but the legislature right now has done nothing to cut the Department of Education's budget. The budget that passed continues to exist, and the cuts are being made at this point by the executive branch, by it's called BBMR, Bureau of Budget and Management and Resources. They've made a plan of how to cut to reach 67. And in their plan, they plan to cut DOE by 19 million. And this is what we're pretty much locked up about, is to try to tell them that's unreasonable. It's not rational to cut DOE by that much. There must be other places. And there are other places. I don't know if you believe this, but there are other agencies in the government of Guam that are not being cut at this point, not according to their plan, only certain agencies. And that's what we want. We want them to do do that over, do harder work, and determine really where the priorities of the government are, and to reflect the priorities that have been in place for many, many, many years. We have a dedicated funding source to the Department of Education because it has been the priority. We have those laws in place, like the superintendent said, because those are requirements regardless of the cost. It's supposed to be. And so it was my understanding the last time I talked to the board that the Department of Education, despite the threats from the administration, we're still receiving their allotments. And I hope that's still the case. We've seen this in some other years where they don't release the allotments to the Department of Education, even though they're mandated by law to do so. And that becomes a big issue, right? So I just hope that if allotments are not being released to the Department of Education, then we should all be up in arms, and we should fight like anything to make sure that the allotments get released to the Department of Education. But the other thing I just want you all to understand too, the other side of this coin, it's not as simple as pass this one bill, because I'm not sure if you understand that if you're urging passage of this one bill, you are urging an increase in the sales tax. That's on every single transaction when you go buy a Coca-Cola, when your family, who's working very hard, goes to the store to buy anything. That's what this bill will do. It's going to increase that cost. And so that's why there's a debate. It's not a debate whether education is going to be funded, because I don't think there's anyone in there who believes, education is not going to be funded. And we think that there should be cuts in other areas. And so I just want you to understand too, and to think about your families, and that they are also proposing, I think it's a threat to force us into a sales tax, and I hope, you're not being told otherwise, and that you're being told very clearly that this is for a sales tax. But otherwise, there is no bill before the legislature to cut the Department of Education.
I also just want to reiterate what the Vice Speaker has just told you. I think that the bill that's before us, we are currently in special session. So in special session, you can only consider one measure. No other measures are able to be considered. Many of us have introduced amendments to that bill to try to make it a little bit more palatable. And I think that many opponents of this bill would prefer a balanced approach. We need a balanced approach to solve this gigantic problem. And that's a lot of the reason why certain senators don't agree. And I agree with what Senator Sen Agustin had mentioned. Our priority in this government are the big three: education, healthcare, and public safety. That's really what the government of Guam and all governments should really be focused on, and providing that for all their people. And I'm also really just super encouraged to see all of you here, and I'm so glad that you are taking a stand and participating in our process, and giving us an opportunity to hear from you directly about your concerns. But also, it really concerns me because as a parent of a GDOE student, I don't want to have my daughter come here and have to beg for the education that she so rightly deserves. And I really want you to know that many of us are parents here, many senators are parents, and the Vice Speaker is absolutely right. This has been a chronic problem that has been building for years and years and years. These allotments that we have appropriated in the Guam legislature have not been given to the Guam Department of Education, have not been given to the Guam Memorial Hospital, have not been given to UOG and GCC. All of these things that we all say are priorities, we appropriate the funds, and unfortunately the executive branch has withheld some of that money. So it's really difficult, and I don't want to drag all of you into an issue that we're currently embroiled in. This is our job to fight this fight. But I do want to say that I'm really encouraged by seeing all of your faces and being able to hear from you today. And that's really what we want to be able to do, is to be able to hear more of your concerns. So I'm going to hand the mic back over, and I really want to be able to hear from all of you who have concerns that you want to. I think sports is a really big one, and all of these different things, because if we don't have interscholastic sports, then what are our children going to be involved in? That's my concern. My concern is that, teachers aren't being paid some of these exorbitant salaries that we're seeing other government officials collecting. And at the end of the day, I think that's all of our concern. So again, I'm going to hand the mic back over to the chairman, and I really want to hear from you students. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, senators and vice speaker. Thank you for your answers, and Penny for all of the senators' thoughts here tonight or this afternoon. This is what my mother mentioned a couple nights ago. Just Penny for your thoughts for this upcoming bill that you'll be voting on. It will be easier with the sales tax increase, if it does go through, it will be easier to pick and choose a cheaper brand of food. We don't need the expensive brands. It'll be easier to pick and choose a cheaper brand than to budget 20% of a family's income. The family would have to cut out so much. Both of my parents work for GDOE. That's a lot of my family's income. A lot of the students here's families are at stake. Day-to-day lives. And just remember that we can all buy cheaper brands. We can all just, skip out on some of the luxury foods that some of us are eating. But it'll be harder to cut out the 20% from our income. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to try my best to be subtle about what I say. Many people in this room, I'm going to say, have a job. And what do jobs come with? Taxes, yes? Now, let's say we get 20% of your salary cut. Which one's more expensive? The 20% cut or a 1.5 increase in business taxes? Or even a 2% or a 3% in whatever you buy? Which one is more? Because let's say you guys get paid, I don't know, let me give you $50,000. I know it's a lot, but then people who've been working in the department get increments. Let's be honest. And our department's not the only one going to get cut. Let's cut out $10,000. Are you really getting, $10,000 in business taxes annually? Can you really not deal with that? I mean, I'm going to sound as little selfish as I can sound, but quite honestly, I think our people would rather pay a 1.5 increase on whatever they buy rather than getting 20% of their salary cut. Because that means that everyone is suffering from the 20% cut. The 1.5 is just hitting people who are constantly buying. Everyone who's going to suffer are the people who can't even go out and buy at all. We have so many employees in our department that are living paycheck to paycheck on their already 100% salary. If you give them 80, how are they going to live? What I'm asking is for the budget cuts to be somehow, assisted with, whether it be I understand that I'm speaking to the choir, but I hope that the rest of the senators who, haven't made a move, or let's say are against that, I'm not going to say any names, but what I'm asking is for everyone to listen. Everyone. And I understand this might be a bit under the table blow, but I understand it's an election year. And I get it. This is a scary topic to tackle. I'm going to say things that everyone else is afraid of saying. This is an election year. Our senators are scared of making big decisions that might affect them. Because if I was a politician, I would be scared. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, say that you guys are bad people. You guys are human beings just like us, and you don't deserve the flack that you get. But what I am going to say is that if you don't make a decision, whether it be a negative or a positive one, the people are going to think that you don't deserve a spot at all. We need people who need to make decisions, who aren't afraid to make the decisions, whether it be good ones that we're proud of or bad ones that we had to make. And I'm trying to ask this from our perspective, the students, because I'm not going to say that all of us come from troubled families. I'm not going to say that all of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm not going to say that we're the ones who are going to be affected, because I can't say that. 10 people up here is nothing compared to the thousands of students that we cater to. You know? And I just ask that you guys please keep that in mind. And I understand that all of you are working very hard. But I ask that hopefully before the 2nd of April, when the superintendent might have to initiate phase 3, that we please come to a decision. Because 90 days from there, if he does give the decision to furlough our very hardworking employees, you have 90 days to fix that. And if in that 90 days we don't do anything, families, our people, Tata Guahan, are going to get hit very hard. And I understand that we didn't decide to tax cut. You know, this was an executive order from a president that we didn't put on the table. But we need to come together. We need to come together as a unified people to come up with a solution. To do this, Masi.
Just as a reminder to all the senators and all the senators who may be testing. Okay. Just as a reminder to all the senators and all the senators who may be listening, about out of how many students are in GDOE? Out of 31,000 students, 2,000 of them are able to vote. So keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. No. Senators have to keep this in mind. They have to keep education in mind, that students are the future. All of the other 31,000 students, they will become a voting age, you know, in the next coming years. They're seeing the decisions you're making. So keep that in mind when you're, not just the decision coming up this Friday, but the decisions from here on out. We're your future.
Test. 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 Test.
Hello? It's working. You know, I just wanted to remind the senators, because nobody said anything about public works. Don't forget the guys that take the students from home to school and from school to home. Oh, you said that there. Okay. Okay. So that's good. That's all I wanted to say.
Test. First of all, thank you, students and the parents, especially the staff. Thanks for coming. 9 times out of 10, I reserve comment when the chairman's here, but he asked me to offer just a couple points. This is an excellent example of civics in motion. You understand the facts of the $67 million shortfall. Let me just be direct to the question, though. So if you ask me a specific question, we should be able to give you a specific answer. So I'm an absolute yes on the compromise bill 248. But I want everybody to know, everyone, that every single senator, to include Senator Frank Uggan, Senator Ada, Senator Morrison, everybody in that hall, all stands by DOE. But what you're going to observe and learn by watching the tape or hearing us talk is we're just not all in agreement on how best to get there. But I have to leave you with this concept. The deal breaker, the absolute deal breaker, is that if we pass a compromise bill today or tomorrow or Friday, that the governor will forego discussions of a furlough or layoffs for the Department of Education. And that's negotiated in good faith. And I just want you to know that, because there's a difference between the political rhetoric and appropriation and cash. Yes, I told my son who's a public school student, yeah, we're going to go get that haircut and we're going to go to the movies. And he says, let's go, Dad, you know, and I said we got 20 bucks, but in reality now I have 8 because something came up. The reality is, in your civics classes, analyze this. This is good practice for you. That as a result of the tax cut, every month we're losing money that doesn't come in. 10 million in October, 5 in November, 5 million in this month. The superintendent receives allotments, but it's a far cry from what's necessary to sustain operations. It's a hard job to decide who gets the check and who doesn't. You're not the only ones. The hospital. If we don't fund the hospital at a certain level, people die. And I'm not asking us to compromise education for healthcare. What I'm asking you to do is continue to advocate that we give DOE its fair share and to walk out of here knowing at least this much. 15 out of 15 senators stand with you. And the deal breaker is, at least as far as the chairman of education is concerned, Senator Sen Agustin, is that in my communication with the governor's office, taken off the table, should we pass something in the next 72 hours, taken off the table would be the threat of a 32-hour work week or worse if you don't have cash, actual layoffs. The process of notification of furlough will have to continue in the event something doesn't work out. So don't be mistaken that furloughs, the discussion of furloughs are gone. The actions to actually furlough people or temporarily send them home, that's a furlough, will be taken off the table. So thank you. Thank you so much for engaging with us and not engaging in a one-way conversation or imposing your thoughts on another, but instead being tolerant of our views. I really appreciate the gentleman's attempt to make a comparison between what's the worst of two evils. And in all honesty, if I was your student, we'd have to take that conversation a little further. I think it's a lot more complex than that. But yeah, I don't want to take any more of the chairman's time or the student's time. But the absolute deal breaker for most of us senators, I think a majority of us on Bill 248, is that if we pass a compromise bill in the next 3 days, that furloughs and layoffs will be taken off the table, and we get a second chance to look at DOE. So on behalf of the chairman and the Committee on Education, that's where we stand. The Committee on Education, as far as the two of us are concerned, there is no if. It's an absolute yes on 248 if we act on it by Friday. I just want you to know that.
So I know I already talked a bit already, but not to be rude or not to put you guys under pressure, but if today was the day that you made the decision, would you say yes or would you say no to the compromise bill? So we already heard Vice Speaker Terlahi. He said a resounding yes. No? Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I'm blanking out right now. Yeah. Sorry. I've been really busy today. So, Will Castro, Senator Lee.
Thank you for the direct question, and my direct answer to you is if we were to vote on this bill today, I was able to offer a number of amendments, but it's just not enough to get me to say yes. I think that there are a lot more things that can be done, and this bill does not represent a balanced approach. It does, I know that there have been a lot of threats, and there have been actions on those threats. We've seen fire stations close, we've seen the police precinct close, and that's not what any of us here wants. And, we've heard a lot from the executive branch in this, and that all of the impetus is only on the legislature. Only the legislature can solve this problem. And I want you to tell you that that is not true. The governor has the power. He has transfer authority. He can keep the fire stations open if he chooses. If that's his priority, he can do that. And this 20% that you were referencing, that is, in my understanding, the superintendent's Plan C. So he started off with a Plan A, and that would be kind of the least amount of impact, and we appreciate all of that feedback from the superintendent and the Board of Education. Plan B, he's moving on to if we don't come up with a solution. So 248 is the solution that they're putting forward, but I cannot in good conscience support a tax increase on our people. And you were talking about, some of those people that are living paycheck to paycheck and can barely make it. This would drastically affect our working poor and people who hold multiple jobs and aren't able to put food on their family's table. And so in my mind, there are much better things that we can do, that the governor can do today, that our administration can do today to be able to realize that those tax revenues on taxes that are already owed. They're saying that there's maybe 50, 100, maybe even $180 million in taxes that are already owed to our people that can secure these jobs, that can keep these fire stations and police precincts open. And really, if that's our priority, then let's say it and let's be about it. Let's walk the walk. And I just want to take one moment, to remind everybody that this body, all 15 senators, earlier in our term, we took a $30,000 pay cut. And in my first bill, I took all of that money and we put it towards DOE. We gave it to the schools for school maintenance. So if that's not putting your money where your mouth is, then I really don't know what is.
Okay.
And I know it's just a very complicated issue. So I know that's probably not the answer that you want to hear from me.
No, but then
And
if
so
it's your answer, I completely understand.
I appreciate that very much. And I'm looking forward to having additional discussions with all of you following this kind of formal setting. And if you want to ask me additional questions, I'm totally open.
Of course.
So thank you so much.
Senator. Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you last because I was going to say something nice to make up for earlier. Okay, the very beautiful Vice Speaker Talahi.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here and listening. And I hope that you leave here very critical of us, of the entire government, and you should remain that way and do that all your life. And I too am very critical. When my kids were at GW, I was furious half the time with the conditions there, when it flooded, and interscholastic sports, how they had no buses. I mean, so many, we can go down the list of things that you are living. But yeah, my vote on this bill, on the sales, to raise sales tax and to raise the gross receipts tax, is going to be a no. But I really believe that there is absolutely the authority to protect DOE, that personnel at DOE, particularly teachers, anyone in the classroom should not be threatened that they're going to lose their job. I think that's just irresponsible at this point. And if you are angry, I'm with you. And if you are afraid, I'm just going to ask you, do not be afraid. I think when my colleague, Senator Castro, said all 15 senators, they don't want to see any impacts to classrooms. We don't want to see that. I thought the superintendent came up with a very good plan in the very beginning for the $12 million in cuts. He was talking about things outside classrooms, talking about office space. I mean, you know, if we have to make cuts, those are the places to make them. But we really are trying to push the issue that there will be no 20% salary cuts or time, 32-hour work weeks for DOE, particularly teachers. It's ridiculous, right? I mean, we just can't function like that as a community.
I mean, quite honestly, our teachers already work more than 40 hours a week.
Of course, they work way more than that. But it's not something our community should tolerate. So I'm asking you to stay critical and stay on top of this and do not tolerate that. Do not allow anyone to tell you that they're going to put your teachers on furlough, close your classrooms, or impact your interscholastics. Just don't allow that. You fight, because we're going to fight for you when it comes to that. And I think that there is a way. And if we didn't believe there was a way, we wouldn't fight. We would give up and we would say, okay, tax all the people, even the poor, tax them all. But we haven't given up because we really truly believe there are other ways to do this. All right? And you can see it in the headlines. If you check out the newspapers, you'll see where some money is being spent. And maybe you agree with us that money should not be spent in those places. Right? Why should one agency be getting salary raises while we threaten students with furloughs of their teachers or, closing down sports? That's just, I hope you help us fight for that.
Of course. And Senator San Agustin?
Well, I'm the author of the bill 248. You can expect I'm going to vote for that.
I hope so.
But let me explain to the audience. I was on the Board of Education for 6 years. For 6 years, I was the chairman of the board. I've always walked across the street when we were here in Agana, and I asked, the DOE needs help. And I've always was told, it's too political. So after 6 years, I said, I'm going to run, because I want to be on the political side to tell DOE, I'm here to help you. And I'm here today to help you. And I'm out to help the schools. And number one, as everybody wants to talk about this sales tax. I don't know if the audience watched the presentation. We talked about the Trump Job Cut Act. We talked about what increases every employee gets. We only talked about the baseline. We didn't talk about all the benefits. The sales tax, some people will say we're going to touch the poor. Anybody that makes less than $9,000, they're normally people that are on Social Security or people that just make less than $9,000. But there's also, when you look at your tax, when you do file your tax next year, you're not gonna feel it this year, but you'll feel it next year. You'll see how the impact is. The difference is from what you were paying $6,000 or what you were recording as a $6,000 deductible is now $12,000. What if as a married couple, when you're writing your deductible of $12,000 is now $24,000. And if you look at your paychecks today, everyone that's working, you look at it, you got more money. Because why? The tax change. I have an employee that makes $14.50. Every payday, she gets $30 more. So if anybody makes more than 14, I know you got a little bit more. And I honestly believe the sales tax is, to begin, it's just a start. Okay? It's a start. And if it's determined through revenue enhancement bills that are introduced to eliminate it, then let it be gone. Then the government will stabilize. But as long as the threat is there, I'm going to offer whatever I can offer. If it has to increase to everyone, just remember when I introduce this, I pay the sales tax. I may be retired Army, but I do shop at Costless. I do shop at Kmart, and I think most of you see me. I'm pretty much everywhere, and I shop at pretty much every store everybody shops at. So we can use that. I support. What is that? I contribute to Guam. Okay, and that's all I'm looking forward to is that if we can help the government stop the bleeding, and Bill 248 does that, then so be it. If a month from today, or 2 months before it goes in effect in September, there's enough revenue enhancement to end the sales tax from implementation, to kill the BBT increase, then so be it. But until I see it, we need to do something. Everybody's being threatened today. I want to make every effort to kill the threat, not to make the excuse of anything. Kill the threat, because like everyone here, when they tell you you could have a payless payday, what are you doing? You take your money and you start working backwards. When am I not going to get a check? How much I got today? And you start budgeting backwards to today's date. Then you know how much you got. But if that's removed, you can at least go out and eat at McDonald's. Go and buy the chicken you really want. You know, they said you can pick what you want. Yeah, chicken is chicken, okay? If you want a burger, go get it at McDonald's or Wendy's. But if the payless paydays exist, the furlough exists, you're not going to go there. And when you don't go there, what happens? There's no revenue. The economy starts to drop. It gets worse. I'm the guy that oversees revenue and tax. I was a criminal tax investigator. I know the numbers. And that's what I'm working with. And until otherwise proven, I'm going to stay with Bill 248 all the way to the end. And we'll see what we can do to move forward. Okay? I hope that answers
Thank you,
your
Senator.
question.
And just as a question, not like I said, not to put you on the spot, but can anyone on this table come up with a, I guess, alternative way to fund our department on the spot right now? Do we have any ideas for sure that'll proven to work? Please bring it up.
Yeah, so actually there have been bills that have been introduced and passed by this body already. There are bills on the books for the last 3 years that can bring in over $22 million in revenue with bed and breakfast, hotel bed and breakfasts. And that's actually been passed by this body. It's a public law, and it's been sitting at Department of Revenue and Tax for the last 3 years. The Calvo-Tenorio administration has failed to act on that. So that's $22 million in revenue that we could be realizing that could pay for, you know, a big chunk of the DOE budget. In addition to that, there's also a tax stamp bill that we passed this term. It was introduced by Senator Sid Nicholas and passed by this body, I believe, 6 or 7 months ago. And that had an implementation date of 30 days, and they're still sitting on it at Revenue and Tax. So there's, like I said, there's a lot of other ways that we can solve this problem that will cause less pain to all of the families on Guam, and that's really what we're going to try to do. We're trying, and there have been other revenue enhancement bills that have been introduced even in the last few weeks to try to solve this problem. So I agree with what the chairman is saying, that every single senator is really trying to throw the book at this problem. We're working very, very hard, late into the evening, early mornings, to make sure that we address this issue and that we do not affect any education, healthcare, or public safety officials in our government. And I just want to thank you so much for raising these and asking very direct questions to us. Vice Speaker.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands. I asked these questions not just for myself, but for the entirety of our student population, because some don't have a voice and some choose not to have a voice. And I want to make sure that everyone is informed. And I appreciate your comments and I appreciate what you said today.
Thank you. I just really want to emphasize that, you know, this is one way, one solution that Senator San Agustin has proposed. And, you know, it's a valiant effort, but I just disagree, and I think that there are other ways that we can address this that may have less of an impact on working families.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just confused. Sorry. My name is Josephine. I'm a iBox representative from GW. I'm just wondering, what does bed and breakfast have to do with this?
So there was a bill that was passed for, basically we collect taxes on all of the hotels on Guam. And a few years ago they found out that there are some bed and breakfast, thank you for the question, that there are some bed and breakfast, like small hotels that aren't paying taxes. And they're operating and they are making a lot of money on Guam, but they're not paying their fair share in taxes. So former Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes authored a bill. It passed the legislature, was signed into law, and it was sent down to the governor's office, and they were supposed to take the ball and run with it so that we could have this $22 million in tax revenue coming in every single year, $22 million every year from this industry. And that's kind of where the contention is, and it hasn't been done. And so it's really difficult for some of us to stomach the idea of a tax increase on our entire island when there's so many things left on the table that we haven't gone after, and we haven't tried to get that money first before jumping straight to increasing the BPT, which is what the governor had proposed. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just comment a little bit about the B&B. Before elected, I was the compliance supervisor at Revenue and Tax. I was the guy that was walking around, actually driving around and trying to find the Airbnb, the bed and breakfast. If you type in www Airbnb, you'll find that there's over 200, if not 300, recorded bed and breakfast here in Guam. Unfortunately, if not 90 or 100%, is not registered to do business on Guam. And how they get their money is somebody would register with them to the internet, pay for it, and then they come to Guam. As I'm knocking at the doors to find out who they are, because at the time, we could levy a $2,000 fine for not being and close them. But let me just let you know, I was the supervisor. There was 3 other subordinates I had, 4,000 business I had to inspect, plus the bed and breakfast, plus the bars. It's almost impossible. But the government should have done something to fix that. They weren't able to. Now, the 4 of us are first-time senators. We're going after to fix it. We got to fix it, because that's the only way to bring money. But then I go back to, when there's more money, then we start reducing what, if passed, from going any further. That's the key. That's my key. And we have one more, and then we got to wrap it up because we have a resolution. I apologize. I wish I had more time for more questions.
Thank you, Senators. My name is Frank Taitano, and I'm the Superintendent for Bus Operations. I sat here for the last how many minutes listening to everybody bickering about whose fault it is and whose fault is not. They shouldn't point fingers or blame anybody. It shouldn't be you guys blaming the governor or the governor blaming you guys. We're all, no matter which way you look at it, it's government of Guam, whether it be GDOE or Guam Police Department or Guam Fire Department or Department of Public Works. For my bus drivers, and I say my bus drivers because I'm the superintendent of bus operations, they're up on the road while everybody or majority of the people in this room are still at Pillow Beach. Okay? If we end up cutting our time, it's not going to affect anybody on the right side of this table. It's going to affect everybody on the left side of the table. Why? Because we're going to stop. We work at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to stop them from working at 5 o'clock in the morning because of night differential or for whatever cut reason that they need to go to. Then what's going to happen is these kids are going to be an hour to 2 hours late to go to school. Right now, or maybe in the past month or 2 months before that, every 15 senators were getting phone calls, or when we come down here, they ask, what can we do to fix this? What can we do to fix that? Now it's going to get worse because they're going to call you more that, what can we do about the kids coming to school late? So it shouldn't be that everybody's going to point fingers. We're all one government. And I expressed myself before that it's one government. We all should work together because it's government of Guam. We all share the same hurt and the same burden. Not enough money and not enough manpower. So with that being said, it's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt these guys. All of these students that are here. For one reason or another, my supervisors that were here were bus drivers 20 years ago, took some of these guys to school when they were elementary. Now they're all, what, seniors and juniors? These are the future leaders of tomorrow. So we need to do something, whether it be you guys or the governor or somebody. Somebody needs to do something. It needs to get done. Not yesterday. Yesterday's dead and gone. It has to happen today. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for coming. I wish we had more time. But if you do have any questions, feel free to contact us. I don't want to announce my number. Just we'll be here. Okay? Yeah, Mr. Manjola.
So thank you, senators, for coming out. I just want to, we're going to go back out into the community. Your superintendent and I and our board members are going to go back out into the community. We're going to talk about phase 2 and phase 3. We've been doing that to our, trying to work with our employees. We're not, trust me, folks, this is something that we do not want to do. This is not a scare tactic that we're trying to or carrying someone's political agenda. If we do not prepare ourselves for the worst, and like he said, it's one government. If we do not prepare ourselves, it's an injustice for you guys, the students. We have to prepare, and a lot of teachers that are here, I know the sentiments because you guys told us. We're willing to make those sacrifices. You keep asking us to make sacrifices, and you've done it on the backs of our employees at the Department of Education. So we hope that the legislature will take action, and in their wisdom, we'll leave it up to them as to what they decide, and if that's the route they want to go, then so be it. But we've been asking, we've been advocating, just give us a number. Give us something that we can plan. Every year we submit the 14-point budget, $320 million, and we usually get 80% of that. This is the minimum. Then they set another minimum for us. So with that, I'm inviting the senators when we go down to the south and to the central and the northern parts of the island, please come out and hear, because the first round that we went, we only had a few senators that did come out, and they understand, and they hear the concerns of the parents, they hear the concerns of the students, they hear concerns of the business community. And so this will be an opportunity that we can come up with solutions to the challenges that we face as a government. And so I thank you, Senator Sen Agustin, for putting up a measure that is a compromise bill. Senator, I believe the Speaker of the Legislature took a crack at it and gave ideas to figure out how to address some of our challenges. And, Senator Castro and the senators that are debating, we understand you have to go through the process. But the department has to continue to plan in the event of a situation, a catastrophic situation that I believe is real. And it's not of our making, it's the making of someone thousands of miles away. But we're going to fight every day, and we want to be as transparent and open with you as much as possible. So if you don't know, please ask the questions. The superintendent, like I said, the line of communication comes from the superintendent or the board chair, and then of course we'll disseminate that information out to the community. So Duas Masi, senators, you will get a notice from us on where we have our meetings. I invite the student leaders to come out, our teachers. This will be an opportunity for you guys on our time to really engage with them, and I know that Senator San Agustin will get his colleagues to join us. Thank you.